Hello knitters and card makers. This video is a bit different from what I usually share. I'll be putting this up on both my knitting and card making channels because it involves both knitting and card making. I just wanted to show you as quickly as I can how I make these little knitted embellishments for my knitting themed cards. Sometimes I like something a little bit different besides the usual die cuts or stickers or whatever else us card makers use in our cards. It's a fun way to combine my old favorite hobby of knitting with my new favorite hobby of card making. I realize that not all card makers knit and not all knitters make cards, so I'm just going to try to keep this as general and basic as I can. If you have questions about one or the other hobby, I will do my best to answer them. I'm going to assume that the card makers will understand what I'm talking about when I'm referring to something in regard to the making of the card, and I'm going to assume that you knitters will understand what I mean when I'm referring to the little knitting part of my card here. But again, if you have questions, I will do my best to answer. First, I'm going to show you how I make the little knitting needles. Really easy to do. You just need some toothpicks, some beads, and some glue, a pair of good scissors, and an emery board. So you can use round toothpicks, or they actually make square toothpicks, and these remind me of the Knitter's Pride cubics, so sometimes I use those. But today I'm going to just use the round ones, using some size 6 beads. Okay, so you just take your toothpick, a little bit of glue, put it on the end of the toothpick, slide your bead on as far as it will go, and then just set those aside to dry. Okay, and then I have some that I made a little while ago that are ready to be used in my project. So you see they have, of course, that sharp tip. We want to get rid of that. Just going to take a pair of scissors and snip that tip right off. And you're going to have a little bit, I don't know if you can see that, a little bit of the tip still poking up. So you just take an emery board, file that down, and there you go. You have your knitting needles ready to go. Okay, now I'm going to make my little knitting embellishment, and I'm using sock weight or fingering weight yarn. I like to use the thin yarn because it really cuts down on the bulk of the card. There is still going to be some bulk, but the thicker the yarn, the bigger your embellishment is going to be, and unless you're hand delivering it, there might be issues with the card going through the postal machine unless you pay extra to have it hand canceled. Sometimes I use embroidery floss for these little knitted embellishments. I'm also using size 0 needles, and I think I'm going to do like a little mini shawl this time. So I'm just gonna start by casting on 2 stitches, and then I'm going to yarn over and knit to the end. Turn and yarn over, knit to the end, and that's how I'm going to make my shawl. So just yarn over and knit to the end is all I'm doing for my little shawl here. And you know, if you can't hand deliver and you want to mail your card and you still would like to use bulky yarn, you could get a little box to mail the card in. Or of course, if you're sending a gift along with it, just put the card in the box and you could use any weight yarn you want. If you crochet, you could even do this. So here's my little shawl. You don't have to make very much because again, it's just a little embellishment. And I'm not going to, of course, bind off. I want this to look like it is a work in progress. So I'm going to take my knitting needles, one of them here, and I'm going to knit off just a few stitches onto the toothpick. You could actually knit the whole thing on the toothpick, but sometimes those toothpicks are not smooth and the yarn catches. So I just like to use my nice smooth knitting needles for this, and then just transfer the stitches to the toothpicks. See, it's rough and it's catching there a little bit. You could file it down with the emery board, of course, but then that's just getting into a little too much work for me. Alright, so I have a few stitches on my one needle, and now I'm going to take my other needle, slide the stitches to the end, and just transfer them to my toothpick. So if you accidentally lose some of your stitches, maybe your little embellishment unravels, you could leave it like that and put a sentiment on something like, I don't know, if you're feeling unraveled, hang in there, things will get better, something like that, you know. Just something so that you don't have to start your little project all over. You can always fix your mistakes in one way or another. Alrighty, so here is my little shawl on the needles. I'm just gonna snip off this long tail and cut off enough yarn to make a little ball. So I'm gonna just take this and set this aside while I make the card. So I have a bunch of knitting or yarn related stuff here. I'm not sure I'm going to use it all. I have an embossing folder from Marianne Design that looks like knitting. I don't know if this is still available. I've had this for a while, but for you card makers on scrapbook.com or maybe 123 Stitch, I know that Sizzix has some like sweater embossing folders or stitch folders that you can find. If you just go on, you know, your usual craft websites and search for knitting or yarn, crochet, something will come up. The stamps are from Paper Tray Inc. Again, I don't know if they still have these. I've had these for a long time. So these are the stamps, and then I have some sentiments from Paper Tray Inc. as well. I'm not sure that I will be using any of these. I might just use a general thinking of you stamp. Okay, so I just have a panel here. I will be making an A2 card. And I'm going to trim my panel down, just because that's generally what I like to do. Just take off, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch from one side, and then from another side. Going to be using my Kaleidacolor ink pad. Again, I've had this for a really long time. I don't think they make these anymore, but you might be able to find them like on eBay or something. So for my stamping, I think I'm just going to do some little balls of yarn from the Knit Bits stamp set from Paper Tray Inc. Just going to grab my little ball here. Okay. Not too bad. I think I'm just going to keep stamping off because I like the darker and the light. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, so here is my card base, and I decided to just use no special occasion, just thinking of you for my sentiment. And I already have it scored and my stamp on the back. So I'm just going to adhere my panel. This is from Frantic Stamper. You get a lot more on here than you do in a roll of score tape. So I've been using this for a couple of years now, and it is really good double-sided tape. You get more for your money. And let's see if I can get this on straight. I think I want to give my little shawl something to rest on. Got my 2-inch punch, and I think I'm going to emboss this. Just pop that right in here. Okay, there we go. Just going to put a little color on here to kind of match my stamping. So I've got some purple, just residue of whatever ink is left over on my brush. So I want a little bit of dimension for this. I'm going to use my adhesive squares. These are the, let's see, these are the black foam squares, 1mm from Spellbinders. I really like these. They are not as thick as my other foam squares. So you still get some dimension, but not as much. And I don't want a whole lot on this, just a little. So these are perfect. Oh, and you know what? I like to glue mine on as well. Just because there's some texture on here and I want to make sure it's really stuck down. But I'm always afraid that whatever I'm using these on is going to pop off the card. So always a little extra careful there. You know, I didn't even check to see if my embellishment's going to fit on here. Should have done that first. Oh yeah, we're good. Okay. So got my little foam squares on here, a little bit of glue on that side, and I think I'm gonna pop this right in the middle. So a little tiny bit of dimension, not much, but it does lift it a little off of the base or the panel. So now for my little embellishment, I'm just gonna glue this down. You could use hot glue. Actually, I think I am gonna use hot glue. Usually I use my liquid glue, but I'm gonna try the hot glue this time. Okay, let's see how the hot glue works. Just grab the tip of my shawl, press that down. Okay, make sure you hold your little ball yarn out of the way. Then I'm going to stretch this up right there. The only thing I don't like about hot glue is all of the glue strings. Alright, let me just get a little bit under my needles here. Whoops, sorry, off camera there. Just a little glue to hold my needles together. Alright, and then I'm going to make my little yarn ball. Just gonna squish it up. More like a yarn butterfly than a ball. And I guess I'll just put it right here. Okay, so now I have my little embellishment attached. All I have to do, fold my card. And there is a nice little card with a knitted embellishment.